Welcome to Local Leverage, your competitive edge in business. As always, today's show is brought to you by Property Radar, the hyper-local lead generation platform for small local businesses. If you're a mortgage broker trying to compete with big retail in 2025, this is your episode. Today's guest is Alec Hanson, a veteran mortgage executive with LoanDepot and one of the industry's most influential voices when it comes to modern lending. Alec pulls back the curtain on how major retail lenders structure their lead funnels, from first contact to long-term nurture sequences, and what the borrower experience actually feels like from the inside. More importantly, he lays out where independent brokers can punch above their weight through smart systems, personalized follow-up, and agility retail just can't match at scale. If you're building a lean brokerage and want to close more loans without mimicking the big guys, this one's for you.
Let's go. Great to be here, man. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being here. Man, this is going to be a really insightful episode for us because, we're speaking with you, one of the top marketers in this area. And a lot of our listeners are independents and they're trying to sort through and trying to figure out how to do it effectively. I just feel like there's a ton of exposure and expertise that you can share. So if you're good, let's dig into it.
Let's rock.
All right. So let's start with, the funnel and all of the kind of what I would consider to be your lead generation engine that you've built. And so I'm just curious, like at the very top of that funnel, when a new lead enters, and I'm curious about how you get people to enter the funnel, but what is the chain of systems and touch points that start to kick into motion automatically as a result of somebody expressing interest or looking for information?
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to overcomplicate this often. But it's interesting because consumer behavior is changing in like real time as we're talking. And so that's an interesting dynamic. But most of the time for top of funnel information, the old school stuff of speed to lead and like getting to people very, very fast is still critically important. Now, so most of the time you're talking phone calls, within 6 seconds of ingestion, they're getting the phone's dialing. And a lot of that is automated and designed to be that fast. When you walk through contact centers, you're going to experience people on headsets where it says waiting for call. And it's just like they're on with the phone with people instantaneously. Now, what's interesting about the consumer behavior trend I'm talking about where everything's shifting is humans aren't answering their phones anymore.
Right.
Even when they ask to be called, so to speak, even when they put their phone number in and they're like, yes, the second that phone rings, you're like, ugh. And I got a good personal example of this the other day. My sink cracked and I was like, crap, there's a crack in my sink. No big deal. I got to figure out how to get a thing fixed. So I do what everyone else does. I'm sitting there at 6:30 and I'm on Yelp and I'm like, got to fix my sink. And I put it in and I put my information in because I do want my sink fixed.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Yelp has this function where it's like, would you like 6 other people to call you? And I'm like, yeah, competition's good. People started calling me.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I don't want this. But I do. And I put my information in. So obviously texting is becoming paramount contact strategy. It's undeniable that, that's going to work a lot better. But that's also picking up in multiple, in lead ag situations, there's multiple texts coming through. So now, you lean on, a lot more sophisticated, like video personalized text messages, which again, that's hard to scale, but the breakthrough on that is tremendous. A lot more, especially if you're a localized professional and you can throw in the fact that like, hey, I'm down the street or I've worked here for 20 years, or if you want to grab a coffee, even though a lot of consumers aren't going to do that anymore, they want kind of a digital hands-off experience. It does cut through the noise and creates a connection point and gets better conversion. So again, not to overcomplicate it, but speed to lead, phone, text, and then emails and kind of a cadence follow-up is kind of the best in class process right now to, out convert and deal with leads coming in at the top of the funnel.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, that just in itself, it starts to expose some of the sophistication and complexity that could exist there, but there's a whole tree of how you're going to move people from channel to channel and engage with them where they want to engage.
Yeah, there's a huge emerging medium which we can talk about or save for later questions around chatbots, direct messaging chats, because consumers, our chairman has a comment that has stuck with me forever, which I think is just a fundamental like worldview that people need to embrace, which is you have to serve customers the way they want to be served.
Right.
And so if they're coming at you through direct, like one of my early learnings as CMO back in the day was they would engage via direct message. The second you try to move them out of that platform, conversion drops off. They don't want that. They're not,
Right.
They're there at the moment they want to talk. But there's plumbing issues still. It's hard to get a lot of technology connected to that. It's very manual and human centric, but again, you got to serve customers the way they want to be served, or they're just going to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And I can only imagine in your case, just the then complexities of scaling that across a bunch of different, servicers and loan officers.
Yeah, which is actually an interesting conversation because it creates space and room for localized individuals
Right.
to play a game of their own that's hard to compete against in a scaled platform, because
Yeah.
it's almost impossible to scale up to, a million calls a day for an individual, but it's very easy for them to get personal, tactical, and one-to-one in direct messages, text messages, et cetera. And so there's a war here that's very interesting because they're being fought differently,
Right.
but there's opportunity on all sides of that.
I love that you brought that up, and it's something I want to tap into a little bit later. But I mean, one of the key things that we preach, especially to these kind of smaller local business providers that we work with, is you have an opportunity to differentiate and compete with things that can't scale or don't scale well. As long as you go deep on those, because a large entity can't chase you there.
Dude, there's Gary Vaynerchuk just did a keynote, and I love a lot of what Gary says, but he did a keynote where it's literally 5 minutes of a keynote and the rest is Q&A. But in that 5 minutes alone, he breaks out some radical truths that are affecting current marketing society today. And one of those is that the quality of content, or the creativity, ingenuity of content, and the personalization of one-to-one, a real human, not a spokesperson, right, is now being able to get more reach and more influence and more relevance than like curated, even boosted paid content from organizations. So he's kind of calling out that like there's a moment in time right now where an individual can make huge impact.
Yeah.
By stepping to the forefront into this awkward social video world that no one likes. So that's a very interesting thing too that you just highlighted, which is that's real. There's an opportunity now that's fascinating.
Yeah, I totally agree, and especially in this age where the content creation and distribution is becoming more and more tech centered, AI, the need to stand out by being genuine, authentic, personal, localized, like that's what's now going to separate you from just all of this other noise.
Oh my gosh, I can rant on that for 7,000 hours. I'm so passionate about that topic and comment. It is absolutely the secret weapon and the opportunity in the market today. There is so much noise in the world, and consumers are so frustrated with how much blanket marketing is slapping us in the face every day, that we're craving authenticity, connection. We're so digital now. We stare at phones instead of hanging out with people. Even when we're hanging out with people, our phones are within hand's reach. So, the ability for an individual salesperson or owner or whoever, to get on social and create content and make an impact that is substantial to their business is crazy.
Yeah, totally agree. So I'm curious, and maybe I should have started with this, but how are you at LoanDepot identifying borrowers based upon kind of early signals? Like and the obvious would be, soft pulls and things like that. But beyond that, how are you identifying those intents? And then what's the strategy behind taking it from recognition of intent to some sort of an outreach to generate a lead?
So it's a great question. There's some radical stuff that's happening at the forefront of that that's pretty wild, and I'll give an example, because then people kind of start realizing that they have a problem. There's so much contemporary data being produced that's coming together now and being organized around individuals, to the point of, I was pitched a while back on a concept of having this data enrichment against my book of business that will tell me with pretty intense accuracy if you are visiting open houses in your marketplace, what sales price kind of averages you're going into, and how frequently. And, I can track the same thing as if you're going to Home Depot or Lowe's every weekend. And so I can start getting a huge early identifiers of like, hey, this person's starting to either think remodel or move or whatever's going on. And I can target messaging now through any medium I want. Even, my servicing app, but just a push notification to the people that are making me payments, hey, is this of interest to you? And so I use that point to kind of elucidate that the world's going to become so crazy. I mean, we already know everything's listening to us.
Yeah.
We already know it. We joke about it. It's like it shows up in our Instagram feed, and we already know this is happening. The smart devices in our home and our phones are all listening and tracking. And so we're going to be coming to that place. Gosh, do you remember that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise?
Sure.
Right. Everyone, if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That whole world where it's scanning people's faces and delivering ads directly to them.
Right.
They nailed it. They were like, that's 100% accurate.
Yeah, that's where it's headed.
So that sophistication in lending is going to become more and more significant, especially with large servicers who have large portfolios that they're trying to protect. And so independent mortgage bankers who don't have servicing strategies have a huge problem because those servicers are going to start plugging into this kind of technology, and they're just going to be faster to the customer. So, that's the threat. Like, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And the only moat around that, the only opportunity anybody has to fight against that data is to be intimately connected relationally to those humans.
Right.
And that's A, hard to scale, B, hard to do. C, your only avenue, in my opinion, is social media. You can call, you can hang out, but if you're a past customer of mine, how often can I really call you before you're like, please stop calling me? How often can I really check in? So
I think it's totally gated by the amount of value you can bring. If it's just a check-in, or if it's just kind of some superfluous touch point, then yeah, you're right. I'm going to get fatigued quickly and I'm going to bail out. If you're somehow able to bring me value and
Yep.
awareness, then I'm likely to stay engaged longer. But it's still tough. You're right. So, I mean, you're touching on this Minority Report, like all of this kind of amazing targeting. One of the things that I talk about often with our clients is, the power of using targeting, but not making the person feel targeted, right? So how do you take all of these signals and then make an approach, whatever channel, in a way that doesn't creep them out to feel like, man, you're just way in my business. You know too much about me.
Well, I think there's an interesting conversation around that, and not to go too deep, but I think there's going to be plenty of people that are fine being creeped out. If you're adding convenience, if you're adding convenience to their life, it's like, yeah, sign me up for more of that. Like, I don't want to have to deal if it's making my life easier, then thank you. Now, if you're, and this is generational too, right? Like
Sure.
As people grow up through this lifestyle or life change, it's gonna be like, this is how things are. I was joking with my friends the other day and my kids who are 14 and 12 that they're going to have an AI assistant in their life.
Yeah.
And they're going to name it, and they're going to be friends with it, and they're going to teach it, and it's going to be with them for a long time. And they were kind of like, huh. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's coming. For other people that are, older, like, that's freaky. I don't want that. I don't want to share that stuff. But I think the future of this is going to be more and more people accepting of how much things are known about them. And of course, there's going to be a ton of people that are like, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this. And so you're right. There's going to be some tact, some kind of subtleness to the interaction. But, even today, right? Like, there's a lot of drama in the news around triggers and credit triggers, and that whole world's exploding. But, there's a lot of loan officers today that are leveraging credit triggers, but instead of creeping out the person that they know they're shopping and cheating on them, they're framing up a text message or a call that's, a little more manipulative, which is like, hey, just checking in. How are you? No reason, everything going okay? So, yeah, I mean, you're nailing it. It's just going to be a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think you have to be thoughtful about that. And again, if you're leading with value, or just like your point, making it easier, simplifying things, or you're doing that in a way that is, empathetic, I think you have a much better chance of somebody receiving that message well and not just being, Jesus, get away from me, right?
Well, and Mark, to your point, like it depends on the level of relationship. If you and I are close and I'm adding value to you in whatever capacity that means to you, and I see you on social every now and then, and I'm jumping into your world and cheering you on, and you're seeing some of my stuff every now and then, and personal and professional, yeah, maybe I have a little more privilege or right to call you more frequently, engage, share things, come at you. If it's pure transactional, or if I bought your data and you don't know me and I'm coming in and to insert myself, it's radically different. So
Right.
I do think as the emerging technologies create all this new go to consumer strategies, relationships are going to be a way to deal with it. If you're willing to put the time in for that, because that's hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm curious, you started out, I think, actually, writing loans, and you were in the trenches. And then, by the way, which I think is like the best path to be an effective marketer, is to actually be on the front line selling and get those reps in before you become a marketer. But I'm curious, as you've gone through this cycle now a number of times, like you think back to maybe the cold outreach strategies that worked during the last refi boom, and now here we are in maybe a little bit of a next one. What are the things that were used before that are now completely ineffective, and what do you see replacing those old methods in today's lead generation market?
Well, let me start with, kind of a viewpoint to see how, that sets up this that question. In the old days of which, I was not Thomas Guide, I was MapQuest printouts, but I was pretty close to Thomas Guide.
Yeah.
Literal phone books and kind of just the BS way of getting in touch with people that today is so silly. But we were building Rolodexes back then. We were building a contact cards that we could follow up with people on. ACT database was just coming out, and I was, putting people's information in there so I could know when to call them and start to actually store stuff instead of a stack of business cards. And the conversation really was, though, the bigger that connection, the bigger your Rolodex, the bigger your audience, the bigger your community, the more opportunity you're going to have as the market shifts. And so, for example, rates come down, you start dialing for dollars. And a lot of loan officers are going to try to do that again in this cycle. Rates come down, I pull up my CRM, I pull up whatever I got, and I start dialing for dollars. The problem, as we're chatting about, is that with data and predictive nature increasing, that they could already be gone.
Absolutely.
So that old tactic of as soon as rates are there, I'm going to pounce, is outdated. So now how do you defend against that? Well, you've got to start making pre-refinance calls, right, which is wild to me, but it's real. You got to call customers and go, hey, rates are going to come down at some point. Can't predict it, don't know when. But if they do, can I prep your file? Can we be ready? Can I just text you and get the thumbs up? It's that. So that way, when somebody does come in at them saying their servicer or whoever, time to go, you've already defended against this attack.
Yes.
So that's a wild change. The second thing that's wild is the opportunity to have a megaphone into a gigantic community today has never existed. So if someone is diligent about building social media connections, building a community there, staying connected to people there, being in people's digital lives, they create something that has never existed before, which is the ability to go farm that group as soon as the market is advantageous to that. And so if you've never done that and you have no connection and no followers, and you're not connected to any past clients on Facebook or Instagram, then you have no chance. But there are people putting the time in now every day, extending contacts, extending influence, extending community. And so when that opportunity comes, they're going to be in a position that nobody else is, and they're going to swoop in a bunch of business too. This has never existed before.
Yeah, man, you and I are in lockstep. I mean, there's a couple things in that I wanted to make sure we emphasize. I mean, first is like, if you're there and you're waiting for that event to occur, whether that be a rate decrease or something else, and you're picking up the phone, you're 3 to 4 weeks too late, right?
Yeah.
You can't be operating in that mode anymore. And then the second piece is, oh, and by the way, I mean, there's no excuse to be operating in that mode these days. There's plenty of information out there. There's plenty of data to be able to identify your audience and to engage with them before the rate drop. And then secondly, is like your point is, this transition from kind of gatherer to hunter to farmer, and like if you're just kind of waiting for the scraps or just buying leads, you're at this kind of gather stage. You make the transition and evolution to become a hunter. I'm able to go find something today and generate a commission to feed my family. And then there's like, how am I going to feed the whole community? Well, you're going to do that through farming efforts, right? You're going to establish brand and trust and all of this. And so, and I'm in full agreement with you. And I think people have to think about it in those evolutionary sequences, because it's hard to go from just a gatherer into full nurture. It takes a long time to build that farming strategy. But yeah, you got to be thoughtful about that, all three.
I'm obsessed with that analogy that you just said, and it's wild. I don't think I've ever heard that before, or if I did, I didn't connect it. The farming mentality is so dead on, because the farmer has to prepare, and
Right.
you don't reap what you sow day one, and you got to put the work in over time to get the reward, which is such an accurate representation of the market today and the industry today. You don't put the work in, you don't plant the seeds, you don't prepare, you're not going to get anything when the time comes. So
Right.
well said, man.
No, thanks. No, I mean, I like I said, I feel like we're working off the same brain here. We see things very similarly. So I'm curious. Let's talk a little bit about I don't know, this concept that I see so often. I like to term it like sales breath. When you've just got somebody that gets a lead and they're just so excited to close it that they jump in and maybe move the process too quickly. And just as a quick aside, I was at an event 2 weeks ago with a bunch of mortgage professionals, and one of the guys who has a very large call center, I think 180 LOs under him, was talking about that the average deal that they're closing is actually 20 days old from the point that they became a lead or that they bought it as a lead. And so there is a very distinct like nurture sequence that occurred there before it closed. And that doesn't mean that speed to lead isn't critical, but I think what his point was, or maybe the point that at least I took away from it was, you don't have to close it, and maybe you shouldn't try to close it right away. Maybe you should be establishing trust and bringing value so that when they are ready, when the motivation is really high, that you're the logical choice. And so I'm curious from your perspective, with, a sales cycle that could often take months, what is it about retail or about, your business that in terms of the pacing that you're doing really well and that you've gotten right?
Well, I'll answer it this way. Great question. It's getting it right and evolving with the times are different things, So obviously, if you're in the call center business and you talk to a lead, you're looking for that conversion point to happen now. In fact, we're all aware of some of the major call center players that compensate not on fundings but on conversion events, and that because they're just trying to get the deal done. It's like they've turned it into a conveyor belt. And there's humans though involved in that, so they don't all work. But it's almost like that's the price they pay, and the ones that aren't ready to convert, they fall out, and we'll try to get another shot later. Whereas localized sales professionals, obviously the difference, they might not get the lead again.
Right.
They got the referral from the realtor, and so they're gonna hold that baby and massage it and never lose sight of it for months. And they have a longer sales cycle because they'll just sit there on it. And the interesting blend of that is where the magic happens. So that comment you made about it's the 20-day cycle from lead to when it's converting and all this stuff is very telling on consumer behavior. We click buttons on the internet, but that doesn't mean we're ready to go.
Right.
And so patience and listening and understanding, and then leveraging technology so you can scale a little bit with whether it's automation, auto follow-ups, et cetera, to keep you top of mind, can help you kind of multitask. But I will agree with you in this sense. So one of the things 8 years ago LoanDepot started doing was sending purchase leads to retail in-market professionals to see how they would convert versus a call center 8 years ago. And the thing that stood out the first and the most interesting thing was the fact that retail loan officers by nature aren't looking for the immediate conversion, because they're trying to build relationships, and they're used to getting leads that aren't ready to go yet and need some time. So just by the nature of how they've evolved, they ask different questions. Mm-hmm. They're not going for the kill necessarily, and I'm generalizing, but you're tracking. So they're kind of like, well, what's your time frame and how you doing, and you got family, and where do you they're just talking. And so they started out converting the someone who was purely transactional. And then, by the way, there's plenty of direct consumer loan officers that are not transactional, right, that are building rapport and trust. So this is more of a lesson for people that maybe are struggling with conversion or not hitting what you're talking about. But that stuff started to really stand out, which was, wow, different questions, different perspective. They're coming at this differently. They're looking at it for the long term. They're looking at it for relational purposes, and they're out converting. There's a lesson there.
Absolutely. So this, I have a bunch of questions as a follow-up here, but maybe the first is like, so where you're seeing people that are disengaging from maybe that initial point at which they're a hand raiser or they've been qualified as a lead, what does your sequence look like for keeping engaged with them so that they maybe resurface, or that ultimately it's not just a lost opportunity?
Yeah, we try to personalize this a little bit. So I'll speak to different channels. So in retail, in market, there's a lot of customization allowed around our cadence follow-up process. So if you want to create a series of text messages or emails or tasks of like reminders to call and kind of more manual stuff, that can all be implemented, and we build kind of a template and send it out, and then people come in and say, oh, well, I don't, that's too much. I don't want to call them every 2 days, or I don't want to text them every day. I want to do this. And so they kind of come on top of that. I mean, kind of gauge their success and kind of how they work, but it's very individualized because people, individual localized salespeople do things their own way. In the call center community, it's a lot easier to kind of regulate and put, a series of text follow-ups, email follow-ups, and then start to follow up with different offers or different kind of incentives to try to say, what do we miss? Even different salespeople, are part of the flow at times, depending on the customer's experience, to see, well, maybe it just didn't vibe. That's a real thing. They didn't connect. It was a personality type, conflict. So that's a lot more automated and kind of systematic. But the universal truth under all that stuff is follow-up's always how you win. Always how you win. The first at bat is rarely the home run. It's just not anymore. People want a little information, but they're going to shop. They want to hear more. They're not ready. They're with their kid. You called them within 6 seconds and they wanted it, but they're not ready. So it's always the follow-up that wins in mortgage lending.
Yep, totally agree. So let's bridge off that and let's make some folks uncomfortable. I want to know, like, where do you see most independent brokers dropping the ball in their nurture game as a result of what you just said?
Well, the ones that are blowing it the most are the ones looking for the quick kill, and they're transactional by nature, and they're just, if they don't get the kill right then, they're moving on. And they built their business to allow them to move on because they've got another lead coming in, they got another deal coming in, so they just cut it off and move on. That they're stunting their ability to form real relationships. They're building a business without the intent of real relationships. And so that transactional mindset is going to bury them. They will not survive. They might be able to live for a period of time, but they're not building a career. They're not building a business. So that to me is the number one kind of like, come to Jesus, wake up, pay attention. This is real, and you're not doing it right. And I know that there's some great mentors and great business owners out there who are fixing people's mentality when they get stuck in that or they get into that headspace, because that's the quickest way to become irrelevant.
Love it. Yeah, 100%. So at the top of this, we were talking about, kind of the ability to scale or not ability, or when things don't scale. So in your business and in kind of larger retail, you've got huge marketing and nurture engines going on. But with that comes some rigidity. And so I'm curious about, like, where can an independent mortgage broker flip the script with personalization and being hyper local in a way that large retail can't scale?
I mean, you nailed it with the word personalization and that human touch and the human capacity. And because that is not, no business can scale that. I can't do it. No one can do it. But an individual can absolutely do it. And it's their superpower. So their ability to put systems around themselves to make sure that they stay, because look, most of this game is consistency. People fail in the execution. They fail in the follow-up. They get tired. They didn't set the reminder. They have bad systems. So if you're sitting here going, how do I compete against the mega behemoths that have these big engines and machines? You build some systems around you that will hold you accountable to do the things you already know you're supposed to do. They know what they're supposed to do. I mean, I've sat down with some fantastic independent brokers, and I'm like, they know. They're not dumb. But execution is always the deciding differentiator.
Always.
So if you build some systems to help you stay consistent, then you can send those personal video text messages. It takes seconds, to fire off something. But man, everyone wants to outsource the work. I don't know how else to say it. It's the tragedy of humanity. They want to outsource the work they're supposed to do. If I can buy a widget that will text them for me, I'm like, you failed. You're out.
Right.
You text them, but I don't have time. Then you're going to lose. Then lose. Find the time. Make the time. You can't outsource effort and work to something else and expect to win. You have to do it. And that's where the opportunity is.
Love that. So often people are just chasing this new shiny object, whatever that new technology is, a new outreach mechanism, or whatever, AI chatbot, it doesn't matter. The point being, like, oftentimes the most success is going to come from the basic blocking and tackling through the mechanisms and channels that work just consistently day in and day out, but they require effort. And you see that all the time. You see that the effort and the behavioral consistency isn't there, and therefore it doesn't work. And typical reaction, oh, well, what else can I go buy? What else can I use as a technology to make this easier? And that's often not the right course of action.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Jones, who's a great author and speaker, we had him at an event, and I was up on stage first talking to the team. And one of the questions is, what's coming next that will make my job easier? What can the system do for me to help me get more loans? And that question is a great question because it's coming from a place of like realness. Like, hey, could the system do that for me? Could the system reach out for me? Could this AI text them on my behalf? And all good questions. Phil gets up there and he's like, if Alec does all that, what do we need you for? And everyone just was like, oh. It was great. He's like, if the machine does that now, and so what are you here for? It was a moment where everybody kind of was like, oh, huh.
It is the uncomfortable truth, but spot on.
Yeah, that's my job. I'm outsourcing my job. What do you think's going to happen?
Right.
But again, it's like, well, it's hard. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Why is it not supposed to be hard? We're crazy.
Phil Jones, for those that don't know, is an author, and his basic premise is kind of the importance of words and phrasing and how to communicate effectively. And I can't recommend his material and things enough. Great stuff. Let's keep on the same vein, but I'd like to ask it maybe from a different perspective. Like, I mean, given your background in large retail teams, what's the uncomfortable reality about competing with retail that most independents just aren't ready to face?
Well, look, let me answer it this way, because there's huge controversial battles about like what models are better and who's best and all these things that I find ridiculous. And the reason that I'm stating it like that is because not everything's for everybody. I know some really incredible entrepreneurial minded business people, loan professionals that just thrive in a independent broker style environment because the way they want to do things has so much ingenuity and personalization and kind of customization that they can't work in a scaled IMB environment because there's too much here that they butt heads with. They shouldn't be here. They got to go be themselves. But at the same time, when you have such scaled resources and tools and technologies, if you're not using those, the hell are you doing here? Like, so there's value in a scaled model that's got efficiencies and technologies that the cost is so minimized because it's scaled over a large platform that you could outcompete and do niche things more creatively and better if you're using those tools. So there's just a different mousetraps for all these different people, and it's really hard to compete against some of those scaled up deals. I mean, here's a great example. You're not going to make 1 million calls a day to digital customers as a broker. You can't do it. You can't compete. We're going to get that business. We're going to go in there and we're going to be on the phone with those people, and you're not. So what can you do? Well, can you run localized ads with your own voice on Facebook and Instagram that talk about a specific product, maybe even a down payment assistance product that city or county is doing that you have access to, that maybe we have access to too, but we're not making ads about that. We're not coming down to that level.
Right.
Can you win there and start to build brand and connection and community? Yes. And, so just to kind of put a pin on this, fight where you're strong, understand where you're deficient or weak, and that's okay, and double down where your strengths are. And so, I mean, you're not going to win against a monster that's going to call a customer in 6 seconds or call 50 customers in 6 seconds. You can't do that. But what can you do? Well, you could probably do some other really cool creative stuff that gives you an edge.
Awesome. Sage advice from a guy with Thor's hammer and a war helmet behind him. I love it. So let me, I just got done a couple minutes ago saying, do the basic blocking, tackling, don't chase the shiny objects. But I mean, the reality is there are a lot of new technological advances going on.
Yes.
What are the things that you're most intrigued by? What are the things that you see yourself chasing in earnest over the coming months?
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between shiny objects and massive consumer behavior trends. Like, there's a difference. There's a difference between a widget that's going to do this for you on your behalf and the fact that humans are consuming billions of hours on YouTube every day. So what are you going to do? How are you going to respond to these things? AI is coming in insane ways that are going to change everybody's world. And so I think that you just have to, number one, I love this book, Who Moved My Cheese. I talk about it all the time. It's a stupid book, but it's so relevant to what we're facing. It's great because one of the core tenets is pay attention to what's changing in real time around you. Don't just assume that everything you've done before is going to bring you success in the future. And every human I've ever talked to nods their head at that. Like you and I are like, yeah, we live this. That's true. And then what do? We just don't change. We do everything we've ever been doing. We don't do anything new. We don't look for new technologies, listen to things that are changing, pay attention, adopt, adapt, try new things. Like, when was the last time you tried something new? How often are you experimenting with ads and new technologies and new data sources? I think that's the biggest problem that most successful people are facing, is they've stopped innovating and trying new things because it's working. It's one of the faults of, the guru kind of environment we find ourselves in with social is what they did might have worked. It's just not working anymore, but they're selling books on it every day.
Right.
And it's like, well, does that still work? And they're like, buy my book. So it's like, I think, man, if we can just all stay students, if we could just all stay in this learning environment, in this curious environment about what's happening, I think it's going to be the key to the success for some people and the failure for others.
Totally agree. It's funny you bring that curiosity up. I mean, I'm such a strong believer in that is our number one company core value. Like, you have to be curious, because I think that is the genesis of most everything else. I mean, certainly the innovation, the understanding, everything stems from that. That's a great takeaway. Alec, this has been awesome. I mean, I could go days with you on this stuff, but I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, I really appreciate you coming in and sharing perspective from the retail side, from the large operator side, and being so transparent. If this hasn't been an amazing wake up call for those independents watching this and listening, I don't know what is. Like, not only did you share where the traps are, but also how to compete in it, and so I thank you for that.
Let me just share this as we kind of wrapping up here, that I think is one of the things I'm most passionate about right now as we look at this landscape and the changing environment. We're in a war for relevance. Salespeople, companies, salespeople, et cetera, are in a war for relevance. And I talked about this on this kind of a live cast on AI is going to come take your job, but it wasn't because of what everyone thinks, like it's going to be better, smarter, faster than me. It's more relevant than you. People are going to go there first because it's this thing that it's more relevant in their life than you are. And so this is going to become a war for relevancy and connection. That's the opportunity, though, for everybody paying attention is, okay, if this is all changing, and I mean, it's like when the internet came out. I mean, nobody knew that the internet was going to be the main place people go for information when it first started. No one even thought it would become this thing in our pocket that we have access to all of human knowledge. So you look at Uber coming in and disrupting. You look at Amazon coming in and disrupting. You look at Google becoming a megalith of information and becoming a verb and owning this space. AI is going to be a very similar experience. It's going to have this relevance in humans' lives. And so if you're worried that AI is going to replace you, it's replacing you because you're becoming not relevant to your customer. They're going to go here first.
Right.
And so it's Zillow that is selling realtors back their own leads.
Right. Right. Because how absurd is that?
Yeah, realtors used to get those leads before Zillow. And then Zillow was like, well, now we're intercepting them here and you're not here.
Now you got to pay for it.
We're here.
Yeah.
And so you want them back? Pay us. It's awesome. It's genius. So what I would share for everybody listening and struggling or thinking and trying to come up with things is just, what can you do every day? Obsess over the question, how do I stay connected and relevant to the people I want to maintain influence with? And if you can obsess over that question, then you'll find answers. You'll find data solutions. You'll find ways to, be connected that, you can't do on your own, partnerships, and then you'll find content strategies and everything else. So just obsess over, how do I stay relevant to a consumer? Because look, just follow your own behavior. What are you doing every day? Are you talking to ChatGPT every day? Have you stopped using Google? Like what's happening? Because that's what your customer's doing.
100%. 100%. And I also often say internally, like, it's like, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who utilizes and leverages AI better than you do. Like, that's the risk. But you have to bring that personal element to it, right? I mean, you've got to be the one that creates that connection and establishes that relevance, to your point, and then leverages the technology to do it better, faster, stronger.
I challenge loan officers all the time, and I ask them what their job is. What is your job? And outside of all the nice language that we wrap around it, like, making the American dream possible. I love the language. I love it. But outside of the language, what's your job? And if you don't understand that your job is to generate leads for yourself, you're screwed, because that's the job. Because secondarily, you got to provide great product knowledge. You got to be an expert. You have to have mastery over your trade. You got to make sure that you can close and provide exceptional customer service. And all the downline things are very important. But if no one ever calls you, it doesn't matter how good you are at any of that stuff. So in this battle for relevance, focus on what you can control. Focus on what's in your world of mastery, and get after it. Because the world's changing.
That's a perfect place to stop. I love that comment. Hey, if you found value in this, make sure you are subscribing or sharing this with a friend or colleague that can also get value from this. Alec, it's been a pleasure. And again, thanks so much for all the transparency and knowledge bombs you dropped along the way.
Fantastic combo. Thanks, man.